Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle. I'm your host, Marianne, and today we're digging into the critical questions we all face as we grow older. Things like, how do we stay independent? What are the best ways to plan and pay for care? Is aging at home really the best choice? Joining me for this conversation is Laura Lynn Morrissey. Laura's on a mission to empower people to age well, stay independent, and thrive as they're aging. With a background in finance, healthcare, fitness, and aging wellness, she understands these questions and the tough topics at hand. As a certified fitness trainer, nutrition coach, and aging specialist, Laura blends science-backed strategies with real-world experience to provide practical solutions. As the founder of SilverSavvy, Laura and her team offer expert guidance, curated resources, and a supportive community for older adults and their families. Laura, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Marianne. It's a pleasure.
This is such a great topic. I just said to myself this morning as I was recording a podcast really early, and it was on a similar topic. And I said, boy, it's interesting how this conversation is really starting to get out there, which is fabulous, right? It wasn't, and we were saying like 5-10 years ago, nobody was talking about this stuff. So fabulous to have you here and be able to dig into some of this. Can you kick us off and just set the stage for what led you to this decision? Because as I read your bio, you have a host of experiences and doing things. So what landed you here in this space where you're, SilverSavvy and you're curating information and products and services and critical decisions for people aging? What led you to that?
Well, it's interesting. From a personal standpoint, I began working with home care years ago when my mother became ill. And so many of us, especially daughters and daughters-in-law, they end up playing that role of either being the caregiver or coordinating care. But I started off in my career on Wall Street. So I grew up in financial services. So on the outset, I was pursuing a career like so many of us in our 20s. But behind the scenes, I was a caregiver. I actually have been a caregiver for my mom since I was 7 years old. So I've always had an awareness of people in need and developed a real empathy for people who need more support. And at the same time, as I was providing care for my mother, I also was forging my own life, which a lot of women, especially in the business I'm in now, I talk about that. That as we move into these caregiving roles, we need to make sure that we're paying attention to ourselves and caring for ourselves. So I went from financial services. And then as I started to look into professional care for my mom, I saw an opportunity to improve the type of experience that the clients have when they hire care, as well as provide world-class job opportunities to caregivers. So I bought a home care company in the Boston area. I left financial services and bought a home care company. And then, that wasn't enough. So I bought another home care company. And, but it was really, I didn't know what I didn't know, other than I wanted to provide a better experience to both caregivers and the clients. And I started to see what aging is all about. I started to see what it was to age well. I started to see opportunities for those that may not have made the best decisions when they were younger, and they were reaping the outcomes of that as they got older. And eventually I sold that company and then decided, I still have an awful lot of advocacy and a lot of personal stories to tell. And I decided to start SilverSavvy. And really, it is a labor of love. There's, as you just mentioned, so many of us are talking about aging today. And what does that mean? And I believe that there is a recipe for success that each of us can apply to our own lives to make sure that we're optimizing the way that we age, how we age, and how informed we are as we age, so that at the end of the day, we can live as vibrant as we did in our 20s as we move into our 50s and 60s and 70s and beyond.
I love that. And so thinking about it in terms of a recipe, I mean, what are some of the top or the primary ingredients that go into that recipe? There's got to be these categories that you look at. What are they?
Well, there is. And I looked at what are the techniques of aging well? Who have I observed that I thought, you know what, they really figured it out? And what are the things that we did when we were younger that we need to go back and revisit as we get older? So there's really 7 that I've come up with. And this is part of my life care planning protocol that I use in my practice. So this physical wellness, we talk about that. So many of us say, I want to age at home. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying in my home. I've been in my home for 30 years. I'm not going anywhere. Well, do we really know what that means? So really taking that down to how are you climbing the stairs and climbing down the stairs? How are you picking up your groceries, emptying out the dishwasher? How are you going up and down the stairs doing laundry? So physical wellness, staying strong, mobile, independent, that is one very important aspect, if not the most important aspect next to social connection. The next one is emotional and mental well-being. So protect your peace of mind and make sure that you're constantly thinking about your own mental wellness. So we talked earlier about, being that caregiver for others, as especially, women primarily provide that level of care to others, whether it's bringing up children or whether it's caring for folks at work as a manager, whether it's your parents, whatever, ensuring that you are taking care of your own emotions and well-being. Another one that's really important is purpose. So many of us, as we get older, maybe we had an amazingly fulfilling career, or maybe we raised our kids and for a long time that was our life and all of our friends revolved around all of that. As you get older, the thing that really starts to impact the quality of our life is not feeling like we have a purpose, not waking up in the morning and saying, you know what, I feel like I've got, even if it's something small like maintaining a garden or volunteering in town, or, perhaps visiting folks in a nursing home who might be lonely. So whatever that purpose is, you need one in order to age well. So there's 7 of them that we can go into a lot of in-depth conversation about, but it was funny. I was on a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and this woman mentioned, summing it up in 3 sentences: someone to love, something to do, and something to look forward to. And that's the essence of living a full life.
Kind of love that.
Yeah.
Right? I kind of love that. Yeah. I think the purpose one is so good. Back in February, I had an episode with Wendy Leggett called Retirement Redefined. And Wendy is focused not on the financial aspects of retirement, but on all the other pieces that most people don't think about.
No.
And it's a whole topic now to be prepared for the non-financial side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Many people just think of it like it's going to be one big vacation. But how long does that last for most of us, right? It's not, you're going to either get bored, you're going to run out of money, whatever. It's just not, it's not sustainable. And thinking through some of that stuff is so important. And I also think I love the examples you gave for purpose, because a lot of times people get hung up, any age, people get hung up on, they can't think of something like solving world hunger or, the tax deficit problem, like whatever. That's not what people mean when they say find your purpose. Like, it doesn't have to be this ginormous, life-changing thing for the whole wide world. I mean, that would be nice, but it's these little things that can mean so much to you, to your community, to your people. So I love the examples that you gave. They're real.
And I think really showing people and having a conversation around it's small changes. So, someone said, well, I really don't like working out, but I just feel this whole idea of working out every day is just too much for me. And maybe it's because they really haven't either had a regimen, or maybe they just feel the whole process is overwhelming. And at the end of the day, it's small bite-sized pieces. It's, what areas of your life do you feel are most important? And then you work with or talk to someone that may know a little bit more about how that works, but you develop a plan that's consumable.
Yeah.
And it's not overwhelming, because as we all know, if we feel overwhelmed, we'll blow it off.
Yeah.
I mean,
100%.
I know I do. If I feel overwhelmed, I'm like, I'm not doing that today.
100%. Yes.
Not doing it.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you for some insight around, I'm looking for like the less obvious thing. So I hear the biggest question that people grapple with is, the should I stay or should I go? Should I go into a facility, or do I have to go into a facility, or do I age at home? And I think some of those questions are fairly obvious, like if there's a big health concern and you need care, like strong care, you may need to go into a facility. But what are some things when I'm thinking about going or staying that maybe are less obvious that we should think about? Does anything jump out at you?
Well, again, if you talk to somebody about what's most important to them, and oftentimes, and I worked with a number of clients to stay in their homes or to move into independent living or assisted living or what they call continuous care communities. And the first thing that matters is, what are your values and your goals? Some people are open to and social connections, and getting rid of some of the chores of maintaining a home becomes a priority. But for others, it's by all means, I am staying in my house. And the things that you need to think about are, for those of us on the East Coast, those 2-story colonial built homes often have full bath upstairs, the half bath downstairs. They may have some stairs getting in, and really thinking about, okay, I can't tell you how many clients I worked with that would give themselves, baths in their little half bath on the first floor, and they would sleep in the sunroom because they could no longer get upstairs.
Yeah.
Because there was no planning involved. So I think you have to think about that. There's a practical side to all of this as well as an emotional side. For instance, my mother and her twin sister bought a duplex, and they thought, cool, we're going to age together. We're best friends. Mom's on top. My aunt was on the first floor. Well, my mother ended up having, health issues and couldn't get up those super steep stairs up to the second floor. So the good news is, she said, I'm staying here. I'm like, okay, great. We put in a stair lift. But those are the things that you have to think about. Like, if I want to stay in this amazing home of mine, what is it going to take?
That is such a great reminder. And for the listener, if you didn't catch the episode back at the end of March called Aging in Place, Home Safety and Smart Modifications with Greg Cantori, it's a great episode to go through kind of some of those changes, modifications, assessments in your home. All right. So what else, Laura Lynn?
And then the isolation. I don't think people really understand that as we get older, our house might have been a real center of activity. But I know even for myself, I've had friends move away. I've had some friends pass away. I've had to dust off those social skills that I had when I was in high school and college and first out of school. I've got to go back out and start reinvigorating my friendship circles.
Oh, yeah, that's a good consideration.
Whereas assisted living, you don't necessarily have to do that. And if you're going into assisted living, there's a lot more than just the beautiful wallpaper and the chandeliers and the yummy food. There's a lot more that you want to understand about assisted living communities and, to make sure that it's the right place. There is definitely behind the scenes, peel back the onion stuff that you want to ask and make sure you understand before you sign on that dotted line.
I was actually going to ask you that, and I wasn't necessarily going for assisted living. It was more for like full care, and we can go in either direction. But I've recently heard about things that I didn't know even existed, like that you have to, or you can pay extra service fees for having somebody go with your person to meals at private facilities, and just different services that don't necessarily come with what you think you're getting.
That's right.
And I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
So I guess, right. So I guess, and I'm betting more people are like me that don't even know that that's a thing. So how do you know, like, again, what are some of the less obvious things? If let's say we made the decision, we're going in somewhere, we're going to live somewhere outside of our home. What are some of the less obvious things that we need to think about that maybe we don't hear about often?
I love this conversation because I love sharing information that I don't think people otherwise would have had. And, the assisted living communities, it's a competition among assisted living communities. So each one might have a little bit of a different flavor, but generally these are non-medical environments. So a lot of people kind of make an assumption when they first go in thinking that they'll get some level of care similar to a nursing home. And, out of the gate, that's not the case. However, there is certain level of support that you can get that will enable you to stay in those communities longer than you might in another one. So, and it all centers around your physical capabilities and the number of times that you fall. So you go into a community and you want to know, okay, you want to use scenarios. So what happens? I move into the community today. I'm perfectly capable of caring for myself. I can take a shower. I can prepare my own meals. I can sit down in the dining room and I can eat whatever food you serve me. What happens the first time that I might be a little bit weaker. I might be sick. I might take a fall. What happens then? So that's the first question. Because when you fall, you move into a different category of client, and then you become somebody that the community is going to monitor. Because at the end of the day, you can only fall so many times before you become a major risk to them. These communities provide a lot of services and a lot of value, but at the end of the day, you have to be aware of what happens when your health is no longer at that tip top level.
Yeah.
There is a point in time where you have to evaluate whether or not you can stay there. So a lot of communities don't allow anybody but the people who are living in the apartment to go down to the dining room. And so you can pay extra services or extra money to allow companionship. I know when I was in home care, we had this gorgeous assisted living community. We used to call it a cruise ship that never left the dock. And the caregivers could not go down to these gorgeous dining rooms with the clients. They could wheel them in, they could walk with them, but they had to leave the dining room, leave that person alone for dinner, which I thought was unfortunate because oftentimes you have that connection with your caregiver.
Yeah.
They would allow family, but they wouldn't allow anybody who was in a medical or non-medical field to go in. Other things that you want to think about is what's the tenure of the executive director of that community. You want to know the stability of the management. You want to know what's the average tenure of the caregivers that are in that community. And the reason for that is when you have happy caregivers, you have happy, well cared for residents and folks that, might need care. So I always ask, what does your tenure look like? How many caregivers do you have? Tell me a little bit about the hiring practices. Do you have recognition programs for your caregivers? Because that will attract the best caregivers.
I love this.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing is what happens, another scenario. So my health begins to decline. I'm in the hospital and I come home from the hospital. If I need additional care, do I have to move my apartment to another place, or can I stay in my apartment while the care from the community comes in to take care of me? That's important. Not everybody understands that. Some communities, you literally have to pack your stuff and move to another area where it's truly assisted living, while other communities, they'll bring the care to you, allowing you to stay in your home. Yeah, I could do a whole 2 hours on
right
how to evaluate an assisted living community.
But it's good. Even just seeing a little bit of it is a great lesson in that there's so much there. The whole thing about tenure of your staff, it was like ding for me, like click, because we always ask that in corporate. Like that's something that you cheer about. If you're in a company that has a long tenured staff, it shows that it's a great company, that people like to stay there, that they treat people well, who, okay, then are going to do a better job, right? They're going to be more willing to put themselves out. Same would apply, but I would have never in a million years thought of that. So
yeah, there's been a lot of acquisitions,
yeah,
especially through COVID, a lot of assisted living communities had financial difficulties for all sorts of reasons. Some of them grew too fast. Some of them were impacted by COVID. And so you always want to get an understanding of how solid and stable the financials are of that particular community. So many of them get absorbed by other communities that are stronger. And so all of these matter, because at the end of the day, it would be horrible to move into a community and then find out that they're not financially solvent, and then they close, and then you're having to move out and find another community and competing with others who are also in that same situation.
Yeah, and it's a crisis at that moment. So
yeah, it is.
Yeah, no fun. Let's talk a little bit about financials, but from the other spectrum. So I think it's unfortunate, but I think that financials play a huge role in the decision making of where I'm going to go, what kind of care I'm going to get, whether I stay home or I go. Are there any pointers that you can give on, I don't know, maybe getting the most for your money or looking at things a little bit differently? Again, things that maybe we wouldn't think of when we're just the average Joe and we're faced with helping say a parent and they didn't plan for this. Like, are there any insider tips there that you can share with us?
Well, I think as far as the numbers go, I mean, we know that staying in the home and modifying the home can be less expensive long-term than moving into assisted living. So that the financial aspect it's definitely something that will inform your decision, but it shouldn't be the only thing you look at. The thing that I always I always like to talk to clients about is from a financial perspective, you need, $315,000 between a couple, during the period of their retirement for healthcare in general. And so at the end of the day, you want to make sure that that information is fed into your overall financial plan, because that's going to help inform, what opportunities you have to evaluate. Then what was the second part of the question?
If there was anything that we wouldn't think of about how to make the most of our money, any other avenues for, I don't know, getting tips where money can be found? Like, is there a tree out there somewhere? No.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's probably things that we don't know, right?
Absolutely. So a couple things. When I look at communities, I look at the infrastructure. So I don't always, someone might say, I really want a beautiful community. And I say, no problem. But, here's the things that when I was looking at a community for my own family members, I look at the quality of the infrastructure. And sometimes that will save you money, because if you have a less beautiful community, but they are an award-winning facility, but they might have, older accoutrements, and maybe they're not going to spend a lot of money on updating, the beauty of the place. I'm fine with that, because I know that the person I'm working for, my client, is going to get the very best care, which to me matters the most. But in order to pay for care these days, assisted living communities or even long-term care, we know that long-term care, nursing homes, they don't take Medicare. So, that's out of pocket. So you can look at, am I a veteran? And if you are, then there's a whole qualification to determine how much money that veteran, and a lot of veterans, by the way, don't either understand that that they have benefits available to them, or they're too proud and they just don't want to do it. But this is money that is there for them for free. And it does take, a little while to get the application process in place. But when it's in place and you get that money, that can go towards either care in the home or medical supplies or long-term care. Reverse mortgages, which that's a very complex topic. But at the end of the day, if you own your own home and you want to move into an assisted living community, as long as you maintain ownership of that home and you've got equity in that home, reverse mortgages have become a viable and a safer way. I know years ago they had all sorts of issues, but that's not the case now. They're very highly regulated and a lot safer than they ever were. And that's an option to basically tap into the equity of your home while keeping your home and being able to leverage it for another type of living arrangement as you get older. Long-term care insurance. So many of us don't understand the expense of care as we get older, whether it's assisted living communities, and actually long-term care does have the ability to pay for, if you buy that benefit, to pay for a nursing home care. So long-term care insurance is a great way to hedge your savings against the cost of care, but also provide respite care for somebody that's living at home that maybe a family caregiver is taking care of, home care, so someone coming into the home, a certified caregiver, assisted living, or long-term care, meaning a nursing home. So those are the most popular financial instruments that I've worked with clients on to help pay for different types of care. Some older policies actually allow for, believe it or not, modifications to the home and different medical devices being installed. They're not really popular now because insurance companies kind of figured out that this is very expensive. But yeah, I'm pretty surprised when I come across some of these richer policies that have these incredible benefits. It's like, wow.
I didn't know the veterans one. I hadn't heard that at all. So that's good information.
It's called Aid and Attendance. So it's called Veterans Aid and Attendance Benefits.
Good to know. I'm just thinking in my head, like, where does the average person, obviously they can come work with you, but I just don't know how the average person gets this information. And I am the average person, and so are the listeners. So I guess people don't. That's the thing, right? They don't get all this information, and that's the problem.
And that's the thing. Yeah. And I think that's what I saw. And, I felt like, the online, so a lot of times families are getting up to speed when they're in a crisis. And I found that coming out of financial services and going into healthcare, exactly, Marianne, nobody knew this information. Yeah. I'm going out to dinner with my friends saying, guys, you have no idea what's coming down the pike.
Yeah.
And we've got to get out there and talk about it. So I offer educational support and providing consultative services, but I also provide webinars for on various topics that I think really matter based on what I saw when I was in the field working with clients every day. So I have monthly webinars on my Facebook site. I actually have them scheduled. So I'm sorry, my website, SilverSavvy.com. It actually has them scheduled. So you can go in and see which educational topics. And they're usually from 12 to 1 Eastern Standard Time, second Tuesday of every month. So that's one way. Another way is, there's a zillion websites, unfortunately. And that's the one issue that I found was someone like myself going on, I might take the time to go on. But if you're in a crisis, how are you going to know you found the right information?
Yeah.
So I've tried to create something that sort of consolidates all of that.
Yeah.
Because to your point, it's a lot to think about. So something that I don't really deal with on a one-on-one basis, but I've connected with experts is Medicare. So how many of us are reaching that age where we've got to start thinking about Medicare, but we don't even know where to begin? There are so many amazing experts that you don't have to pay that will sit down with you and evaluate your Medicare. Now, this isn't a service I provide, but it's a resource that I can connect people to that are registered all over the United States that will sit down with you, evaluate, okay, what does your health profile look like? What are your goals financially? And will connect you with the right Medicare plan. And they don't get paid by you. They get paid by the insurance company that ultimately they secure the insurance for.
That's a great point.
That's another service. To me, this isn't always about me trying to, secure some sort of, fee. It is really out of my learnings about aging. How can I connect people who need the information with those that can provide it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because even when you said the website, I'm thinking, again, the average person, it can be overwhelming. Sure, you can Google and you're going to come up with 7,000 websites and it's
Absolutely.
a lot of information. And
2 scams.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And just like trying to pull it all together, like, any other
I did
topic.
it for you.
Yeah. And you don't know. You just don't know what you don't know and you don't know what to believe.
I understand that.
Yeah. So that's what I'm thinking. Let's talk for a minute about one of your specialties, because I think, I haven't dealt with it for anybody that's aging or going through any kind of insurance claims around that. But I obviously have dealt with insurance my whole life of, whether it be house, car, or medical. None of it's ever fun. So I can't imagine this is any different. No offense to anybody that works in that industry, but let's talk just a little bit about the complexity around it, because I know that's actually a whole service that you guys do. Obviously, it's because it must be very complex. So talk to me a little bit about that.
And people think, I bought a long-term care insurance policy back in, 1995 or, 2000, and I should be able to just submit a claim just like Geico. So I got in a little car accident, I submit a little claim, I make a call, I'm done.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that is not the case. There is a lot of elements within a long-term care insurance policy that you may not have remembered when it comes time to initiate a claim, like an elimination period. And what that is when you file a claim, most often than not, you will have anywhere from 30 to 90 to 120 days where even after that policy claim is approved, you will still have to pay out of pocket. And you have to pay out of pocket and satisfy that elimination period before that benefit pays you day one. And a lot of people don't understand that. Now, and it's all a lever that determines your premium. So if you have a pretty standard premium, most likely you're going to have some level of an elimination period, a deductible, 30, 60, not 90 is usually what I see, but it can be as little as 30. It can be as much as 120 days. Now, 120 days calendar versus business. So, and it has to be consecutive. So 120 days of consecutive care. So it's a little tricky. So what I like to do is I like to sit down with folks for a complimentary. Give me your long-term care insurance policy, and I will go down and I will fill out a little form for you that will clarify all of these elements that can impact how you decide to file a claim, when you decide to file a claim. One of the things I tell my clients, don't wait until you have a health crisis that requires care at home 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. That is a very, very expensive proposition, especially during the elimination period. What you want to do is think about, I might need a knee replacement. And so I really don't need care, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to initiate a claim where I will take care for the lowest amount you possibly can, which will mean that's the least amount you can pay out of pocket. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
if you're paying, for 3 hours at $20, it's just $60 a day versus I need care for 12 hours.
Yeah.
At that amount. So it's a way to be effective in saving money while satisfying that elimination period. That to me is the number one part of the long-term care insurance claim process that hangs my clients up. The next is the RN assessment. So every time you file a claim, an RN will call you. They'll validate the fact that you have some level of health concern. They'll validate the 6 activities of daily living that you can and cannot do. Then they will schedule a meeting with you in person. And those are always very, very stressful for people, even though I say, don't worry, because oftentimes the nurse has nothing but empathy for you, but they do work for the insurance company. So having an advocate like myself sit there and make sure that when, mom says, I can actually dress myself, when actually she's been pulling over a sweatshirt every day because she can no longer button her shirt. That
Yes.
in actuality, she really can't dress herself.
Yes.
She's modified her routine in order to get dressed. So, the RN assessment is a complexity that people need to understand, as well as the elimination period. There's others, but those are just 2. So that's why you really need an advocate to make sure that claim gets through successfully, because most often 20% of those claims are denied first time out.
So I'm not 100% sure where you stand on the side of the fence of, is long-term care policy the way to go or not the way to go? Do you suggest it to your friends and family?
It depends. So it depends. There's a certain financial profile where a long-term care insurance policy makes absolute sense. And then there's a financial profile that you might as well just self-insure.
Okay.
And that it doesn't really provide you any hedge or any kind of protection, because you just make too much money and you have too much money. But for the most of us in this country, a long-term care insurance policy is a way to offset that, the expense of care, and knowing that you've got, benefits coming your way. A lot of clients that I work with, they have multiple policies. And so they'll say, well, I'm going to file a claim against this one policy. And I say, file that claim against both your policies so that you have what I call control over that money. You want control over that money, put it in the bank, and then you can do what you want with it. You can invest it, whatever. It's for your care, but you can have control over it. So that is, advice that I give to all my clients if they have multiple policies.
I can see the complexity already. Just talking a little bit about
Sorry.
it, though. No. It's better to be aware than to have no knowledge at all. So at least you know what you're getting into, right? So it's always a good thing. Well, I want to go into one other topic before we sort of wrap things up, because
Sure.
I saw that, one of the things you do on your website is you curate products for the aging population.
Yes.
And I saw you had things for memory, for fall prevention, for transition from hospital to home. And honestly, some of them I knew about, but there were some that I was like, oh, this is a good idea. I hadn't thought about that. So if I were to put you on the spot and ask you, what is the thing? What is the couple of things that maybe we wouldn't think of that are really you really need this, or you really should get this for your person? What jumps into your mind?
Grab bars. Grab bars is the first thing that jumps into my mind. I don't think you can be any age and we all need a grab bar. My husband just recently, he's going to be embarrassed I said this, but he fell in the tub, and we have installed grab bars, and it's not that he has any health issues.
It happens.
He just slipped and he punched a hole in the tub. It cost us, quite a bit of money to get the tub repaired, what have you, but he could have hurt himself.
Yeah.
And so we installed grab bar. This particular tub is very deep. So I always recommend grab bars, because it doesn't matter what age you are. You can always use a little handle when you're getting into the tub. Bath mats. So, how many of us have showers or bathtubs that they don't necessarily have really non-slip. Again, so the bathroom it's always a focus for me when it comes to safety. And I'm also someone who wants things that look nice. So, the things that we offer on the site are very attractive. And I actually have a couple of videos where I talk about how to install them. And I did it in my bathroom. They look beautiful. For those of us, so many of us have loved ones that are living with memory issues or at some level of memory decline. And this guy right here, this is a dog that is an electronic dog that when he's turned on, he barks and his head turns and he responds to you when you pat him. And this was a very, very, very popular pet I would buy for my clients, that especially for those that were living by themselves. We took care of several clients that lived alone, and they may have had pets in the past, but they couldn't have them. So this is one little guy that we actually have, we offer, and we actually have him in the spotlight on our website. And he is amazing. And it's really funny because when I used to buy them years ago for my clients, they were a lot less expensive than they are now because they've caught on. But he's a real cutie pie, and he's got a cute little tongue and cute little feet. You can't really see him that well, but
and for folks just listening in, he looks. I want to say a stuffed animal, but he's better than that. He's more.
He is.
Yeah, he looks more real than a stuffed animal. Not real, but more real than a stuffed animal.
People love him.
Yeah.
I have him in my office here because I have to say I love him too. So I turn him on and he barks, and eventually I have to shut him off. But yeah, so that's another one that is pretty popular as well. And again, the items that we have curated, I chose them because I used them either for my clients or myself. And so I feel as though there's so much stuff out there.
Yeah.
And, there's more things now at the drugstores than ever before, but there's just so much choice. And other things that I talk about are active living. So, for someone like myself, I just took up hiking a couple of years ago, and I thought, I don't even know what to buy. I don't want to buy too much stuff, and I don't want to buy too few. I want to have just the right equipment. So I put out on the site the shoes that I own, the shoes that I wear, and the poles that I use, and the glasses that I use. So it's just as much of a personal journey for me as it is helping my clients.
Yeah, I mean, it's the one thing we're all doing, right? I mean, if we're lucky enough to be here, we're all aging. So
yeah, we are.
So far, no secret at slowing that down or stopping
I know.
it. So
let me know.
Yeah, let me know. That's that purpose. If somebody has that purpose in mind, be a good one. So as we wrap up, if there was one message that you could leave with the people that are listening to us today, what would it be?
Don't look at getting older as a decline. Look at it as an opportunity to reinvent yourself, to resurrect things that you've loved in the past that you may have forgotten about. It's an opportunity to be as vibrant now as you were years ago. This is not a time of decline. This is a time of opportunity. And I'm living it myself, but there is an intentional way you do it. You pick things that matter to you most and just do a little bit at a time, and you'll see the difference.
I love that message. And the best place for people to find you, is it everything at SilverSavvy?
SilverSavvy.com. We are also on Facebook. We have a very active Facebook at SilverSavvy Age Well. And I'm at hello@silversavvy.com.
And we will put all the links out there for you guys if you're listening, in case you need to go back and grab them. Thank you so much.
Marian, thank you so much.
Thank you for spending time with us and sharing all your wisdom. There's so much.
Thank you. Well, hopefully invite me back. I'll talk more.
All right. We can do that. Maybe we'll pick a specific target to do a deep dive on.
Ooh, I'd love
there
that.
were a few there that, we definitely could have went into more depth on. I'd love that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of Message in the Middle. I hope you found something in this conversation that reminded you that you're not alone, and that midlife isn't about winding down. It's about waking up. You're not done. You're just becoming. If this episode speaks to you at all, please share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And if you're enjoying the show, I'd be so grateful if you could take a moment to leave a review. It really helps other women find this community and this podcast. Until next time, take care of yourself.